let's kick it off with what's arguably the big game this weekend, or at least heading into the weekend. It seemed like it was going to be the big one, the big blue, Sydney and Victory. Obviously, a lot riding on this. I think for both teams, kind of very interesting seasons for them. There's a lot on the line for both coaches, both Tale, who maybe didn't get off to the hottest of starts with that poor performance in Adelaide, and Dillis, who's just been unable to really get anything going for the Victory. And they come together at Leichhardt Oval. It was pouring down with rain. The conditions were crazy, but still a very good crowd. Looked like a great atmosphere at the ground as well. And we served up a great game of football. Sydney coming away 3-0 victors. And to be honest, Poletti, it didn't look like the game was going to go any other way. Victory, outside of maybe 10 or 15 minutes, were pretty woeful. And I think that's kind of been the story of their season, is that they've not been able to actually kind of stamp their authority on any game so far. And you know, it's just another big loss to a big rival, arguably their biggest rival. So, yeah, a bit of a disappointing result there. But for Sydney now, that's 4 wins in a row. And, you know, Lachie has put down in his notes, they look the clear favourites to win the league, which I'd slightly disagree with, but they're no doubt a much better side this year than they were last.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I know a lot of people were sort of, you know, tally out after round 1 and an embarrassing performance against Adelaide, but he's come good. It's now I think it's 4 on the trot either side of the international break. The side's performing well. It's looking like a well-oiled machine, which is ultimately what Tally would have wanted last season, and just didn't quite come off the way he wanted. I think you probably couldn't have asked for a better opponent than Melbourne Victory coming out of the break. Sydney looked the better of the two teams for the majority of the game, but I believe, if I remember correctly, they didn't have a shot on target in the first half. And, you know, so if you're Melbourne Victory, you set that up exactly the way you want to. You know, you restrict, you know, a side that's performed better than you all season to no shots on target, and then you go and throw it away in 15 minutes. Like, I just speaking of throwing matches away,
we're talking about the similarities between the two, right? I mean,
sorry, I couldn't help it, Jacob. Look, I just, but you know, so you look at it from that perspective, and it's good for Sydney FC. On the other hand, surely, you know, that seat's getting warmer for Arthur Dillis now. You lose the Melbourne Derby, okay, maybe you can accept that. To then go ahead and lose to arguably your biggest rival, and I know, depending on who you ask, will depend on whether the answer is City or Sydney, but you've lost to your 2 biggest rivals this season. Until today, your only win was against against the only winless side in the competition, so that's not good either. I don't know where Victory can go from here. Like, how much of a leash can you give Arthur Dillis, knowing that you got Tony Bloom in last year as an investor who, okay, maybe he doesn't have a ton of cash to splash in the sense of, you know, there's salary caps and stuff like that. But, you know, you can go and get someone to replace Nikos Virgos in the window at league minimum, as we were discussing in the group chat. There's plenty of talent that showcased itself throughout the Australian Championship if you think the problem is as simple as not having a striker. Otherwise, you know, can you think Dillis is the one to turn it around, Lachie? I don't know. Like, how long of a leash can you give him, knowing that finals is the bare minimum expectation at Melbourne Victory?
Yeah, so there's no doubt he's below expectations, right? After the game between the Jets and Perth, which was going to bump one of the two up, Victory now sit 11th in a 12-team league, which is well below expectations from both, you know, a board level and a fan level as well. Fans are not happy about it. Not only have you lost, as you say, Poletti, to your 2 biggest rivals, but just in the fashion that they've lost as well. I know there's been periods of both games where they've been on top, but just completely tepid in front of goal in the final third in both occasions. And a lot of people have been pointing towards the striker position. I think unlucky as Nikos Virgos has been, I don't understand the decision to bring Jing Reese in ahead of him. I don't really understand what Reese brings that Virgos doesn't. So maybe it's a personnel issue in terms of bringing someone in the transfer window. There's no one that is going to make a difference. Like, Virgos still has natural striking ability and qualities to him. you're not going to be able to just pluck someone else in January that has a better kind of archetypal, setup than Virgos. Like, he is going to be a good player, but he struggled to score goals.
Ali Ugla?
Now, no, look, Ugla has had a great championship campaign, and he is unproven at the top level. He scored some good goals from range in a not a good Sydney Olympic team, and I do think there'll be the odd player from the championship that comes into A-League setups. But Nikos Virgos has been around the world and has done well at good levels, right? So as much as he's had a terrible start to the season, there's no denying that, and he wasn't, very prolific last season. He still has that basis there. So I think you just got to stick with him because you're paying him a lot of money. I understand the whole sunk cost thing, but he's in the club there. They do have a striker. He's not playing well at the moment, but he is there. So I think you have to give him time to turn it around. The interesting question about Dillis is, I think, who you're replacing him with, right? So I think the key question that the Victory board have to consider is, if they ask John Aloisi, are they going to get a yes? And I think if they think they're going to get a yes, then I think this is the week to pull the trigger on Arthur Dillis. In terms of the other club that may have the sway to get a John Aloisi if he's open to staying in the A-League, we know he's been offered overseas as well, is probably the Wanderers. They got their win over the Mariners. Maybe, a heavy defeat in the Sydney Derby this weekend coming up could mean his end. So you got to consider if Aloisi is the target, he's the one guy that really, let's be honest, stands out above the rest at the moment in terms of Australian coaching options. Then you can't wait too long. So I think there's kind of a perfect storm of circumstances where, despite the fact that he led the team to a grand final now, I think actually fans, unfortunately, would be on board with him leaving. He had a good run to close out last season, but he's really performed unders so far. And he said in press conferences there had been good moments, but you've won one game against Perth, which
and we remarked at the time as well, like, it's not an impressive win. It was just you expect that win against the Glory 2-0, like that's the bare minimum. So
that's just is what it is. And I think we're going to say the same about Stage later, right? A win against the Mariners is just kind of what it is. So Dillis has not done anything really, I think, to impress significantly over the first 5 rounds. So again, back to that key question. If they think they're going to get a yes from Aloisi, I think this might be the time.
Who else is even available, right, though, as well? That's the thing. And that's why I agree with you, Lachie, that if you're going to get yes from Aloisi, then it makes sense to take that off.
I know you're going to bring it up. I can see the smirk growing on your face.
Reunion with Patrick Gasnobo. Let's go. Come on.
That's not going to happen.
I don't think he's welcome in Melbourne anymore.
No, I genuinely think I think Victory fans would show up at the airport and keep him out. Like, I don't think they'd let him even land. Like, and that's the thing, right? If you can't get Aloisi, you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place of maybe you've just got to stick with Dillis, right? Until something else opens up. Like,
okay, let me ask a serious question here and a serious option. Is Johnny A an improvement on Arthur Dillis?
Be specific.
Would hiring John Anastasiadis...
Okay, because there's 2 Johnny A's we're talking about here. Yeah.
Right? Sorry, I should have specified, but yes. Would John Anastasiadis be a serious upgrade on Arthur Dillis, knowing that this isn't a Johnny A squad, that this isn't a squad that Johnny A on paper should be able to get the best out of? Would it be enough to start to reverse the course? Because it looks like Melbourne Victory are on a very slippery slope to missing the finals. Admittedly, it's only round 5. But as we've touched on, I haven't seen enough to convince me so far from Melbourne Victory this season that they're going to turn it around under Dillis. Is Johnny A enough of an improvement there to pull the trigger as soon as Heidelberg are done with the Australian Championship?
Is the risk worth it, is the other thing, right? Like, not just is he an improvement, he could be an improvement and it's still not worth it. And I think that Anastasiadis as well, a lot of clubs would be looking at a longer term vision if they were to bring him in. Whereas with Victory, I think it's pretty clear they've assembled a squad that they think can win now. And, you know, we saw that in the off-season with the acquisitions that they made where, you know, they're going out and they're recruiting very well. It was pretty clear that it was a case of, right, we want to go and go one step better than we did last year and actually win the championship. So I think that, in my opinion, and I don't know, Lachie, if maybe your opinion differs here, but that's why I don't think Anastasiadis would work, because I'm not sure that the risk is worth it from a Victory standpoint of what they've done already in the off-season versus, you know, what he might offer in a longer term.
Yeah, it's tricky. Like, you compare his CV to someone like Adila's, right? They both have assistant managerial experience in the A-League, but Anastasiadis has success at a head coach level.
That's true.
That has been in NPL Victoria. Arthur Dillis did make an A-League grand final last year, but you've come from 5th and had essentially 2 good ties to get you to a grand final.
Yeah.
And Anastasiadis, he's had the cup run. They were also champions of the NBL Victoria. They're also into the semi-finals of the Australian Championship, which, of course, I'm not sure if many people know, but Anastasiadis was absent from that game. He was taken to hospital just beforehand. So reportedly he's doing okay, but hopefully he's, you know, all right and his health is all good. Arguably he has a better CV, but Victory is not the kind of club that is usually taking punts on that kind of coach.
And I think bringing Dillis in was because of the circumstance that they found themselves in, right?
Absolutely.
Whereas here, I think that if they have that option, it makes sense to either, if you can get Aloisi in, then that makes sense. But if you can't, like, you know, maybe you do just have to stick with Dillis for a little bit.
Just bringing it back to like the game and the Big Blue, right, with Sydney, I think we should pay credit to them as well.
Oh, 100%.
Joe Lolley, like, absolute legacy game.
There's an Englishman who did perform.
Yeah, one of the few in the country. But he was exceptional. I think he's clearly been the best player in the league 100%. All season, and he actually showed it like on the goals in this game as well. And it's just so clear that Sydney is such more of a balanced side. Even with Douglas Costa leaving, with Leo Senna leaving, you bring in Paul O'Connexler to play as your, you know, CDM. You have a defensive line that's solid. Devonish Mears, Sevenish Beers actually looks like really good this year. He looks like he's playing well. And then you have Joe Lolley in his preferred position. I think it's just a perfect storm of...
It's been a blessing in disguise losing some of those players, right? Because there's no denying Costa and Senna were quality players, but perhaps it's just a case of it just didn't work out for them, right?
But I think like Senna was intentional, right? Like obviously Douglas Costa, the way he left, that was just circumstantial, but it felt like Leo Senna was an intentional decision that's paid off.
Yeah, and it's worked out well for them, and they've really fixed up, a lot of their issues transitionally in defence as well, where they were getting torn apart a lot last year. It's not as big a problem for them this year. And, you know, Marcel Tisserand is actually playing to the level that we'd expected him to now as well, which I think is helping a little bit, having that leadership and that experience at the back. So, no, I mean, Sydney, like I said earlier, you've got them down as your favourites at this point to win the league, Lachie. They're definitely looking good. I don't know. I feel like there's a few teams that have their you know, perhaps have their tails up and their noses in and around it. And one of those teams played on Friday nights, which... How good is a Friday night at Cooper Stadium, by the way? It's been tremendous entertainment for years now, but this season especially has served up some great games, and this one was no exception. Adelaide triumphing over Melbourne City 4-1. That's now 10 games undefeated for Adelaide against City at home. Some 2,500 days since the last time City won at Highmarsh Stadium, which is... I mean, we talk about these crazy stats in football all the time, Poletti, and, you know, there's another one that I'm sure we'll get onto a little bit later as well with the Jets and the Glory and some of their results recently. 2,500 days and 10 in a row. I've seen some City fans just saying, what's the point of us even doing this away day anymore? Like, we know what the result is going to be. So yeah, just that's a ridiculous stat. Like this is, and this is a City side as well. There's always a good, like, when was the last time City were bad? Right? Like, it's not within, you know, recent memory. And that yet they still managed to lose away to Adelaide. It's just a staggering stat.
Well, arguably the last time City was bad was 2 years ago, before Vidmar got the full-time gig when he had to come in the interim capacity. That was probably the last time they were bad. Like, I remember them, you know, there was a few rounds to go. They were sitting like 9th or something. They were well outside. the final spots. And I remember asking Vidmar, I was like, the club's never missed finals since they became Melbourne City. Are you feeling the pressure? And he was like, no, there's no pressure here. Which, how much of that was, him being genuine in that there was no pressure because he was there in an interim capacity and it didn't matter. They ended up making finals that season. But, so, arguably, outside of 2 years ago, I genuinely don't remember. So, on that, though, we know the concept of bogey teams, right? What if for Melbourne City it's not bogey teams, but it's just a bogey venue? And Hindmarsh, for whatever reason, there's just some demons they need to exercise there. Like, maybe if you play that game with the Adelaide Oval, it's 4-1 in favour of Melbourne City, right? like maybe it's just something about Hindmarsh Stadium itself. Like, there's a demon that's in the changing room.
That's a crazy suggestion. There's a demon there.
I can't think of what else it would be. Like, with a league that is as even on a year-to-year basis as the A-League is, in the sense of anyone can beat anyone on any given week. We saw Perth Glory topple Auckland last year at home, and we all know how bad Perth Glory was. They were so bad that Zvilic lost his job 2 weeks in this year, right? Like those are just the sort of things that happen in the A-League from time to time. To go 10 matches, 10 years away from home, away to Adelaide, and not pick up a win seems preposterous in the A-League. Like you almost have to be as bad as Perth Glory to go that distance away to an opponent. Because Perth Glory, let's face it, have not, outside of the Popovich season, have had a lot of bang average years. Sorry, Matt, but they have had some bang average years. In the last decade. It's absolutely baffling. And there were a player up for 55 minutes in that game. Like, how do you get thumped 4-1 when you have a player advantage for 55 minutes and you have the deficit like 30 seconds after the player is sent off? Brilliant goal by City, by the way. Absolutely brilliant work off the set piece. Good hit. But, you have the deficit immediately. And I'm sure, Jacob, you were watching this at the time and thinking, oh, here we go. Adelaide, defensive issues again. They're down a player. They're going to lose. And then they just don't. Like, it just...
And I think that's the thing, right? The way the match panned out puts that stat into even more context, Lachie, where it's like... City, if City are serious about winning, you've got to be getting a result over a 10-man team. Kind of regardless of the history of you at that venue and the history of you against that team. And it just felt like, and it's what Vidmar said in his post-match press conference as well. He said there was only one team that wanted to win that game, and it wasn't us. And I think that's kind of a bit of an indictment on this City side. I mean, they've got obviously Asia to think about as well, and how much is that playing on their mind, but it's been pretty clear, I think, this season that they don't quite look as solid as they have done in the past.
Yeah, it's tricky. Like, I think there was a perfect storm of a couple of different circumstances, right? Because they have the demon or whatever, the hoodoo of like not winning in Adelaide. Then they have a lot of senior players out injured. Matthew Leckie is the biggest one, as his Baich did come back for this game. But I think the big personnel issue was Kai Truan. 100%. His absence was massive. Obviously coming back, played both Socceroos games, only landed in Adelaide on the Friday. He was not going to be fit to start. So they didn't have him. And he was a big part of, his absence was a big part of why they conceded the lead so early. You have Zane Schreiber, who unfortunately, I actually think, like, on the ball and moving the ball forwards, I thought he was great. Some of his passes were outstanding. But giving the ball away where he did for that first goal, that doesn't happen if Kai Truan
completely unforced error as well. It was
completely unforced.
Yeah, it was such a weird thing to see.
Yeah, he just tossed it away. And then even if you're saying, okay, Kai Truan with Suprena injured, does he play centre back? Well, then, Liam Bonatig, sorry, not Liam, I forget his first name, the other Bonatig. Alex, it might be. I apologise, but
there's a few of them, I think, isn't there?
he just loses. He loses Jovanovic for the second goal, right?
Yeah,
and that doesn't happen if Kai Truan's there. So I think his absence directly leads to the first two goals, and then they're down, and then you have we're going to come over. We're going to lose anyway because we're playing away in Adelaide and we don't have Kai True and then we can see 2 goals. And then all of a sudden the red card comes and we can talk about the legitimacy of the card as well. But Kanamori just hits this bomb and you think, oh, okay, City are just going to do City things and not care about all of it and just win anyway. But Adelaide defended really, really well and they were dogged and then they get 2 opportunities on the break going the other way and put it away. And what a goal from White, by the way. The little dribbling. I love it when young players aren't afraid to take on defenders one-on-one.
And that's exactly what it looked like as well, right? It just was like, who cares if this is City? I'm just going to go cut inside, bang, hit it on my right foot. Like it was fantastic to see.
It is Liam Bonatic, by the way.
It is Liam. It is.
You didn't get it right. You're not that sick, Lachie. You got it right.
I'm not that sick. There are a few flying about. But yeah, look, and so Kai Truan, big. Adelaide did well to hold on. Love to see a little bit of bite and a little bit of passion in them as well.
Yeah,
I feel like that's
100%.
just kind of fallen away a little bit. But this is the kind of game that like gives you a 5% crowd uptick for the rest of the season because people will have gone there that night and remember what it would felt like to be, yes, up 2-1, but then down a man and then to go and score those 2 goals. Like you don't forget those moments. So I think, yeah, massive for Adelaide.
And it's anecdotal, but I have seen some comments on social media about, oh, I'm an AFL fan, but I went to this game with friends and I'll be back for sure. Like this was such good fun. Like, so it's, it works. And having a fun team, like you said, with some passion, seeing Andrioli run up the sideline to go celebrate with the players was so good. Haven't seen that sort of stuff since like, Josep Gombau. So it's been a while in Adelaide to have a coach that really gets involved with the players like that. And it's awesome to see. But no, you mentioned before that red card and the legitimacy of it, and I think there's a couple of things that should be added to this discussion around it. Is number one, a decision like that is never going to be received well by a home crowd, and I think that has played a lot into
especially going to review it and being one of the 10% that doesn't get overturned.
Yep. So that changes the perception of it a lot. Number two is the fact that up until that point, Sean Evans' calls had been strongly in favour of Melbourne City, kind of regardless of what had happened. There was a moment, similar area of the pitch earlier in the game. It might even have been the 2 same players, Parius and Kuhn, got in a bit of a tangle, and Parius ended up on the floor, and then City were given the free kick anyway, which, I think that kind of set the tone, and from there it felt like, at least from an Adelaide perspective, of every time something happens to Kuhn, it's going to go his way. And then that red card came together, and Poletti, I'd be interested to get your opinion on it if you've seen it, because I mean Vidmar, I think, puts it very well. Of it's 2 players challenging for the ball, they get their legs tangled, they both end up on the ground, and a red card is very harsh in that circumstance. But the alternative is, and this is what those who have said that it was the right decision is, well, it's, contact made with the studs, high up on the leg. And I don't know. I will say, I don't think it's a red card. I think that the force was negligible, if there was any at all. And it was, a case of these 2 players getting tangled up. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts.
Okay, maybe you can clarify something for me, because the broadcast didn't do it because it sounded like the microphone failed on Sean Evans. Was there a reason? Like, did you actually hear the reason from Sean Evans as to why?
Not in the stadium. So it came out in the stadium as well.
So it was an actual issue with the microphone then, because we didn't exactly get it on the broadcast, but I thought I made out the words violent conduct.
Well, what the word is, and Matt Mays, the Adelaide United media manager, he spoke to us at half-time about it. He had a chat with Dylan Parius, and apparently Parius was saying that Sean Evans had told him, "You've lashed out, that's why it's a red." That would seem to suggest violent conduct.
Yes, it would line up with violent conduct, in which case, if that's what Sean Evans thinks he's seen, and he's seen the video evidence to support that, I completely agree with Sean Evans' decision, because that's what it looked like from part of what I saw. It looked like Parius lashed out with the foot. Now, you can argue about level of contact or anything like that, but once you start getting into that territory, you've got to clamp down on that immediately. You can't, because what happens next time? I think you set a very slippery slope if you don't do that now. We saw, what was it? They were... it wasn't last season. I think it was the season before, right? Where we saw all those red cards that a lot of us agreed probably weren't red cards. And I remember asking Steve Corica in a press conference, you know, when one of the Sydney players at the time didn't cop a red card for a challenge that it was in a game against MacArthur, that we'd already seen similar challenges given red cards earlier this season. Corica's like, no, it was a yellow. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. To me, this was like, it's sort of like, this was orange card. And so like if you were to try to thread the line, I can see why Evans has given it. And I think probably the biggest problem with this challenge is there was enough evidence to support whatever decision you wanted to make either way. If you thought it was only a yellow card, there's evidence there to suggest it's only a yellow card. If you thought it was a red card, there's evidence there to suggest it's a red card. You know, it's one of those calls that could go either way. Sean Evans made his decision, and when he came over to the VAR monitor, he stuck with it, and I've actually got to give him credit for that, because most referees won't stick with their original decision, unlike the football video support system, which we'll touch on a little bit later. You know, where it's deliberately designed, you know, to do the opposite compared to what full-scale VAR is. So I'll give Sean Evans credit for that. And I think, it was one of the challenges that either way you could have found the evidence to support the decision you wanted to make in the first place.
So I think big picture, right? At the start of the last season, 24-25, there was a directive to referees that the threshold for red cards, for yellow cards, in certain situations, and certainly penalties in terms of physicality in the box, the threshold had been raised. And John Moss, who is, former English Premier League referee, he is now the head of referees in Football Australia. He's done these briefings with press from time to time. And in his latest one, he talked about an incident like this, the whole differential between the studs, like hitting someone on the boot and then the studs hitting someone on the calf or higher, in terms of being that yellow versus red card difference. But a very clear and obvious clarification he made is that for studs above the boot, so into any part of the body that isn't just a shoe, for it to be a red card, there still has to be a sufficient level of force and impact as well. And personally, I don't think that sufficient level was here in this one. So my verdict would have been a yellow card for Dylan Perez, because you can see, as Vidmar says, the legs get tangled up, but there is an extension of Dylan's knee kind of into Kuhn's kind of upper thigh where his boot is already planted, right? So a lot of the times we see it where there's actually a gap, and the kind of kick closes that gap and then you make contact with the leg. But I think having the boot kind of already there and just that action of being tangled up and trying to get out of it, he's extended his leg in, but I don't think that's quite enough force or, impact to make it a kind of as dangerous tackle to warrant a red card. So that's the distinction for me. So if I'm the referee, I'm giving it a yellow, but I agree with what Poletti said, that it is so close. You could probably go either way. And one other thing I will say is that John Moss did say that what the Football Australia have now is essentially an independent committee made up of past players and media people and pundits and people who know football, and they've gone back every week. They go back and look at all the big decisions in the A-League, and they assess whether or not the correct decision was made. Now, up until the start of round 5, the A-League had been given a 100% success rate, which compares very positively to what they said was 85% in the Premier League to the same point in the season. I wonder what that figure will be like after this.
It might change. And it wasn't the only refereeing decision. I mean, even in this match, there was, for the first goal, a handball. I think it was German Ferreira just stuck his hand up in the air to stop Luka Jovanovic from scoring before the ball fell to then Ethan Alligetch, who put it away anyway. And then we went and saw kind of similar circumstances in another game this weekend with the Wanderers and the Mariners, where 2 penalties are awarded with just... look. What's going on, Lachie? So
I put my hand up literally in the Riverside chat because I want to talk about this so badly. I don't understand. Like, did these players just forget that they're not allowed to use their arms? Because this is the most
baffling thing I've ever seen. It's
both. I forget who the Mariners player was, but Alex Gerbach as well. Like, this isn't your usual penalty handball decision where it's maybe or maybe not in a natural position and it's just making you bigger and the ball is crossed in and it hits you. these are two players in the same game who have actually actively moved their arm towards the ball to play the ball.
Deliberate thing, yeah.
I mean, they're literally deliberately playing with it with their hand. Like, I don't understand. Two of the softest penalties ever.
Something must be in the water this season, because we saw Luke Bratton do it back in round 1 as well against the Brisbane Roar away from home. Like, something must be in the water this season that's just altering the players' minds that makes them think they can use their hands again. It's
like it's something in that split second of, if I don't make contact, then my opposition is going to get the ball. So I'm kind of going with my shoulder, but I'm doing it very recklessly, and I know it's going to hit my arm, and they just still do it. So those I think were blatant penalties. So I don't think the independent committee has anything to look at there. But it just bewildered me, and that obviously contributed to 5 first half goals. It's like, come on, you can just put your hand down, and one of those goals doesn't happen. Like, it was crazy.
I don't know. It must be just an instinct thing. And, you see the ball coming at you and you just kind of... But, yeah, it just looks so funny to see it. And to see it happen twice in the same game as well. Like, once you kind of write it off as just a mental error. But for it to happen to both teams in the same game, you just saw your opponent do that exact thing. Don't do that. You're giving away a penalty. No, okay, you've gone and done it. Like, it is so silly. But it just added to what was, like you said, 5 first half goals, an absolutely insane fixture. And really, in many circumstances, it's a big win for the Wanderers because it's kind of, they need something in this season. But for Stadgett, it feels like it's just status quo still. A 3-2 win against the Mariners, Poletti, is that going to be enough to really keep him in the good books at the Wanderers? It kind of feels like that victory 2-0 win against Perth, where Dillis, you just kind of expect that result. Yes, the Mariners have been perhaps a lot better this season than many have expected them to be, myself included, but a 3-2 win against the Mariners at home doesn't really feel like it changes much.
It changes in the sense that they've now got 3 points on the board. They've now got 1 in the win column. I think that's as far as you can go. It's, as Stadge said in his post-game press conference, it's getting it off. It's getting the monkey off the back. They've got it out of the way. It's relieving. The pressure eases for another week. But unfortunately for Stadge, that I genuinely believe that pressure is going to be right back on if they lose to Sydney FC, and if they lose embarrassingly so. Like, you can write off a 1-0, a 2-1, 89th minute winner off a contentious penalty and go, well, we were in it for 89 minutes of the game and we just fell away at the end. Or there was a refereeing decision that went against us, or there's a controversial red card which changed the outcome of the game. You can write off something like that. But if you go out to Sydney FC, who are on absolute fire at the moment, and lose 3-0, 4-1, 5-2, like 4-2, like you can't write that off. And I think the pressure's firmly back on Stadgett. And we've already had the coaching discussion with Dillis. The same discussion applies to Stadgett. He's on a 1-year contract. As Lachie said, this is probably not a club that can afford, given the expectations, to wait until the end of the season to get some dead weight off the books, restart again, because they've already had a number of restarts in recent years. They've been given opportunity time and time again to restart under new coaches ad nauseum. They can't wait another 12 months to do it again under a new coach. We haven't touched on the Wellington Phoenix yet, but we could legitimately be looking at a situation where almost half of the league coaches are out of their job before round 10.
Yeah.
Is there any league in the world where that happens? I don't think it doesn't.
But I think that's a product of the league being what it is, though, where it feels like every team can compete, and so the expectations from the majority of teams is we're going to compete this year, and of course half of them can't compete. So you're kind of in that position where this is just one of those years where a lot of those clubs aren't competing so far, so their coaches are under fire. But yeah, it just Lachie. I don't know your thoughts, but yeah, it's like I was saying, I think in the lead up to this round, it's do or die now in the Sydney derby for Stadge, because this gave him that opportunity to play that game. I think had they have lost this, we may be even looking at an interim for the Sydney derby, but I think this has given him that chance to play it. But I think that anything other than a very good win would be pretty much the end of the line for Staj.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a really tough line to tread. Like, you got to remember as well, it was a really good save from Lawrence Thomas right at the end to even just make sure that they won this game. Like, that was how close they were to dropping points against the Mariners. And so, look, I actually don't think the Mariners left a great impression on this game. So I think even though it's 3-2 and Lawrence Thomas had a really good save, like, you get a deflection off the Moraga goal and one of the stupidest penalties.
Handballs.
So, like, how much did the Mariners really threaten to win the game? A little bit right at the end, but not a whole lot. And again, I agree with you. I don't think it moves the needle too much. I think it maybe just gives the players a little bit more freedom going into the derby, knowing that they are capable of winning a football match, which helps. But in terms of Staj, I think I'm with Poletti. I think a loss and anything close to like a 3-goal margin, I think that could be it. Yeah. The fan sentiment is low this week. Didn't do anything to change that. Ambitions from fans and from the club itself are high. Nothing has changed over the past 10 years in that regard. So I think as it is also a very good Sydney team they're going up against. So I think a lot of people's expectations of this team is that they are going to lose next Saturday night. So if you lose,
does that help? Does that help?
Then you're
right?
meeting expectations. Like, maybe that does help, and then you get till January or something where you can make some changes. I don't know, but it's a hot seat for Staj for sure.
In the Newcastle Perth game, and this is just in terms of the game itself, this is crazy because as was brought up on the commentary a number of times, I think the most common result ever in this fixture between Newcastle and Perth is 2-2. And it looked like for a moment it might actually be going that way as well, with the Jets absolutely gunning for it in the final 5 minutes or so. Perth managing to hold on for a 2-1 victory, but through very controversial circumstances, Lachie, with a handball penalty given that, look,
it's not a penalty.
You can't even say I've seen those given, because that's one where I think it's pretty clearly this is an example of this isn't a handball. like I feel like
2 years ago it was given. 2 years ago it was given. But last year there was a definite change in how the handball rule was applied. Yeah. And it's just not a penalty. The ball goes over Will Mearing's head and it's headed back towards him. His hand jumping up in the air to balance is in a very natural position. He doesn't know anything about it, and the ball just goes bang, bang, deflection straight away onto, honestly, pretty close to the sleeve as well. Like, it's not even like it's a forearm. It's not
like it's on the goal line and it's stopping the goal going in.
Goal. No, so I think this one was ridiculous. And good on Perth for getting a win. It's been a long time since they've won away at Newcastle as well. So good for them to get their season off. Good for Griffiths as well to get a win as interim coach. But for me, watching a Newcastle game, it always feels like it's Newcastle against 11 NPCs in white shirts. Like, the game is just determined by, can Newcastle not give the ball away in really stupid areas? They're always good for a goal. They're ranked third in the league in terms of goals scored. They've only had one league match so far where they've failed to score. But they just consistently give the ball away in really, really bad areas. Now, this is obviously a plan from Mark Milligan. You want to be able to draw out the press, play through the lines, because it's going to give you space in different areas of the pitch. But the question is, how long is it going to take for them to get to a point as a team where they're able to reliably play through that press and not give up one or two really, really dangerous transitions, which is what they did for the first Perth Glory goal, which allowed themselves to be at 1-1 by the time that the dodgy penalty happens and they lose the game. So it feels like it's all in their control. Even the Sydney FC game, 3 of those goals were from the same thing, from just giving the ball over in transition in their own half while they committed players forward to do this Mark Milligan style of football. So it's on them. They're going to keep training. They're going to get better week on week. But until they go 2-3 games without conceding a silly goal like this, I don't have a lot of faith that they're going to charge too high.
Does this sound like a storyline we were perhaps talking about last season with a team that Mark Milligan was involved with? That being Adelaide United. They score a lot of goals. They're always going to score. They're always in with a chance there. But they keep doing silly things that throw the game away. I know that kind of happened for Adelaide after Milligan had left, but I can't help but find a bit of irony in that kind of comparison.
Potentially a little bit, but like even Adelaide were mixing up the mistakes they made. You know, this is a very specific thing that the Newcastle Jets are failing to do week in, week out that is costing them games of football. So as I said, this is a deliberate journey that they're going on. So the ceiling for them is quite high. But can they get there this season? Who knows?
And Poletti, you go for it. Go for it.
Okay, no, what I was going to say, so I had, while you were having that discussion, Lachie, I went and had a look at the handball, at the penalty that was given. And I found a reason as to why it absolutely 100% had to be given. And you're going to think this is hilarious because it is. It's the Australia Cup curse. That's why I had to give it. They won the Australia Cup. They can't have anything go their way.
Poletti has brought up about 3 or 4 different things now that are superstitions that have directly impacted the result of a football game. What is going on this week?
I mean, it's the Australia Cup curse. we've seen it over the last few years. If you win the Australia Cup, bad things happen.
I think it's just an inconsistent application of the laws of the game. To be
of course,
honest.
that's exactly what it is. I'm trying to bring some entertainment back to the RBA pod, all right? I'm trying to bring my usual brand of stupidity to the RBA pod.
Who was it on the Dub Zone a couple of weeks ago? They were telling a story about like a former international player.
It was Bianca Galich was talking about a former American teammate at Canberra, and the quote was, "You've got to get your bleep together," or something like that.
Yeah, in terms of like talking about superstitions and whether they affect the game. Like, come on, we serious here? We serious? It's just football. It's football. Things happen.
I think regardless of superstitions, though, and I think regardless of the penalty, Perth were clearly the better team, in my opinion. I mean, there were 2 chances. There was the one ruled out for offside, which was Taggart did his absolute best to try and stay onside there on that break. Yeah. He was so very close, and it was a really well worked goal and a very good finish by Pennington. Unfortunately, then brought back. And then there was only a few moments after that as well. Taggart had one he hit on the volley and clattered into the bar as well. It felt like we saw something different from Perth this week, where they're attacking with intent. Tom Lawrence got on the score sheet for them. That's going to be huge, and it was a well-taken goal. And I don't want to be that guy, but I was the one to say it's going to be a big weekend for him, and he gets on the score sheet, so you're welcome, mate. But no, it just felt like Perth. This is we were saying with the Wanderers, you get a result in the win column, and it's can be a big boost for them. And I think perhaps a little bit of indication with everything that's happened at Perth this season, to go, we can still win a game of football, we can still play good football, we can still go away and get a result. And it's like Matt Olsen was saying in our group chat, it feels like forever ago that Perth won away from home, let alone away at Newcastle. So it's a big result for them, kind of regardless of how it all panned out. But yeah, no, I firmly agree that should never ever be given a penalty. There's absolutely nothing Wilmering can do about that. It just feels incredibly harsh. But
I will say, I also am going to say that it shouldn't be overturned on VAR as well. If the referee's decision is right or wrong, that's what it is. There's no objective facts that VAR can bring that the referee didn't see in real time. So in terms of a VAR process, which they've tried to limit as well, I think it's correct to just stay out of it and leave that decision as it is. Yeah.
Moving on then, some other results. The Raw, they're continuing to kind of build something this season. They go away to Auckland, not the easiest of places to play, and they snatch a draw. And to be honest, the Raw looked very good. Justin Vidic looked like a handful for the centre-backs all game long, constantly probing runs in the gaps in the back line, and obviously that's how his goal came about. A nice pass by, I think it was Michael Roos, who set him through, and a well-taken finish. And Auckland really only looked likely to score from set pieces, whether that was direct, as was the case with Lachie Brook, a great hit to put that in the top corner. Francis de Vries had a chance later in the game as well, where it hit. It was either the post or the crossbar. I can't quite remember, but a very good effort from range. And there were a couple of indirect set pieces as well, where they looked to cause a little bit of trouble in the box. But Poletti, Brisbane Raw, they've been Lachie's dark horse for about 3 years now, but they're finally coming good. And I was saying in the build up to this round, if they can get a result here, that would be huge for their season, and they've gone and done it.
They absolutely have. Look, just on the Lachie Brook goal, all I want to say is, doesn't that just give you Nestri Irankunda vibes against Melbourne City, Hindmarsh. Like, it looked, I don't want to say...
very similar.
Yeah, very similar, right? Like, I'd have loved to have seen, like, I think it was Antonis who caught the behind goal footage of the Irankunda goal that night. I would have loved to have seen the Auckland version of Antonis. Like, get the version of that goal and put it up. I'd have absolutely loved to have seen that, because that looked like an absolute rip snorter of a goal. But on the Raw themselves, I'll put my hand up and say maybe I was wrong about Valkanis. Like, when it was announced, I ran through the numbers. I was not at all convinced that Valkanis was the answer for the Brisbane Roar. I'm prepared to say that I might have been wrong. I want to see more evidence than 5 games. But I'm prepared. Like, I'm leaning towards the fact I might have been wrong on this one, and
I think they're pretty clearly better than they were last season as well, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Like, it, it's just how much of this goes, but they're slowly building towards that. They've got results in almost every game they've played, if not every game they've played. I don't remember off the top of my head.
They've got a loss.
Yeah, they've got 1 loss on their record. Yeah. So they've done well enough, so far, 2 wins, 2 draws, to suggest that they are maybe not a premiership contender, but certainly a finals contender, come the end of the season. And, I mean, to do it against last season's premiers as well, right, who have only looked like they got better in the off-season, I think that says a lot about where Brisbane Roar are at, that you'd back them in to get a result against almost any side in the league, which I think is impressive given where they've been for the last 2.5, 3 years.
So
I agree with that, Lachie. Yeah.
I don't think Auckland have improved over the off-season. And the defensive line is key. Obviously, there's circumstances. No Alex Paulson, Michael Fowd comes in. Dan Hall suspended, Hiroki Sakai injured. So you've got the replacements of Callan Elliott, who's done well in patches. Today wasn't his best game. And then you have Pineacker, who's just coming back from injury as well, to pair Girdwood Reich, who individually as well himself is a very good player. And then with DeVries on the left. But that is only 2 of their main 5 that they had last year. And so it's clear they weren't quite punching at their normal level. And that just must have upset the team a little bit. I'm not sure whether it's like Hiroki Sakai bombing down the right side that is so crucial to some of those combinations, or what specifically it is. But Steve Corica was not happy at all with his side's performance. And Brisbane, I think the main thing that they've done, and this is absolutely a trap that underperforming A-League teams fall into over the course of a 3 to 5 year span, is that when you're playing in a league without relegation and you've been bad for a while and the fans have tailed off and it doesn't feel like there's the passion there for the football club, you just get caught in the same cycle over and over again. And what Michael Valkanis has done is nothing revolutionary, I don't think, on a football front. But he's got a team believing in why they're there and why they want to win. Beyond, the Perth Glory sides that we've seen over the last couple of years, that for the second half of the season, what are they playing for? Like, why are they there? They're there to collect a paycheck. They're not going to make finals. They don't have any reasonable reason for optimism for why it's going to be better next year. They're just caught in the same trap. And I think that's where Brisbane were last year. And I think their squad was quite similar to Perth this year, was better than how it performed last season. But under the leadership of Ruben Zadkovich, they never quite got there. But this year, Valkanis has given them a purpose. It's to represent the area of Queensland and Brisbane and be proud in who you are, play a specific type of football, be proud of the jersey you're wearing, and that inherent faith in who they are and giving that club an identity is giving them a reason to go out and fight every week. And I think that was on good display in this game against Auckland, where they went absolutely toe-to-toe.
Yeah. Is it warning signs now though for Auckland, right? Is it just, no, Brisbane are actually genuinely a good team, or is it we need to maybe have a look at how we're performing because it's not been great?
I think Brisbane are a good team, but also Auckland were an amazing team last season, and I think they're just a good team now. I think Auckland are just a good team. I
think the other thing that you have to look at is the fact that there were 2 suspensions from this game in amongst the injuries that they've already got to deal with. Yeah. So maybe that's all it is, right? Is they've just got a disrupted lineup, as Lachie said. And
I mean, they're still
you know,
sitting second.
Brisbane-
They're still undefeated.
and-
It's
yeah,
you know,
exactly. So a disrupted lineup, and Brisbane were able to capitalise. You know, to get a draw.
yeah. Well, we're going to finish up with the other New Zealand side, and this is one that's going to have me banging my head against a wall repeatedly, because the Wellington Phoenix concede a goal because, let's all say it together,
Because
Chiefy's
of the
high
high
line. it's becoming just kind of their thing. And
Can I give him a little bit of credit? This
Go for
wasn't
it.
like the defensive line on the halfway and
Halfway
a
line,
big
yeah,
ball over the
yeah.
top. It was still, I think it was Luke Braddon put the ball down the side for Poletti, who then Harry Sawyer, as a lot of the strikers have been doing against Wellington, has been sitting in an offside position.
yeah.
So by the time that ball is made to the winger, he is ahead of the defensive line, but behind the ball. So
Yeah.
Poletti, as long as he puts in a decent cross, Sawyer's going to get a touch to it. So it wasn't like the whole, we're just on the halfway line and not paying attention to the space in behind, but it was still beating the defensive line. So it does still feel like the same consistent thing is happening, just like the Jets. It's like, if you fix this one thing, which is the whole point of what you're trying to do, but if you fix this one thing, you're going to be all right.
And I think
Problem
it's
is
more
that
difficult. It's
they're not going to fix it because
Yeah.
Chiefy genuinely believes it. I watched this press conference. He doubled down and tripled down on it again. Like he genuinely believes that this is how they're going to win football matches. But they're giving up stupid goals. Like
No,
they had
that's fine. Like you can believe
yeah.
in what you want to do and
Yeah,
just still
but like-
take
but there's-
actions to minimize the
but Chiefy
cons of your
doesn't
strategy.
believe there's anything to fix outside of the personnel.
No,
Like-
that's incorrect. That's incorrect because he's said before, he understands that there are pros and cons to all these systems. You want to have high possession. You want to have a high line and high press to win the ball back high up the field and create those moments. You are going to allow space in behind. There's a difference between accepting what the bad part of your tactic is to thinking that it's something that you're doing incorrectly that needs fixing. You know what I mean? Like obviously they can be a little bit more switched on when those balls are coming in, but it's not the actual height of the line that is an issue. That is just a decision that comes with strengths and weaknesses.
Okay, that's fair enough. I don't know. I look at it and think that like this is just a collision course waiting to continue to happen every time Wellington take the pitch. We're into round 5 and teams have already figured it out every single week. They know how to beat it. It's just waiting for the opportunity to do so. For some teams, it's going to come in 28 seconds. For other teams like MacArthur, it's going to take a lot longer to do. But it's very easy to beat. You just have to wait for the opportunity to do it. I just, if Chiefy genuinely believes this is the way forward, and he seems to genuinely believe this is the way forward, Wellington are not going to make finals. They're probably going to be.
There's two things here, I think, that are at play. Number one, I think this might be a more difficult thing to fix than the issue with the Jets, where this is much more fundamentally an accepted risk of the way that they're playing. It's similar. The Jets is similar, but a lot of that can be kind of restricted by just working on it, right? And limiting mistakes. Whereas this, it's an inherent, issue that you're going to have and you've just got to kind of deal with. I think the bigger problem in this one was they didn't score. And, they if you can't get up the field and you can't really threaten the opposition goalkeeper, it doesn't really matter how you play because you're not going to get a result. And I think that's the thing that's done them in this one, because outside of that Sawyer goal, they defended pretty well. I thought Oluwayemi had a very good game. He seems to really be a lot more confident now in coming out and kind of commanding that 18-yard box, as he has to do in this system. But there were a number of times where he came out and closed down that one-on-one and wins it and makes the save. But yeah, for me, I think just the bigger problem here in this one was they just couldn't score, and it's like it was it last round against Auckland. You're playing with a 2-man advantage and you can't score. It's I think that's the bigger issue here, Lachie, than necessarily the fact that they've got this high line.
Yeah, look, potentially. When one type of goal keeps coming, you have to be worried. And so There's two issues. Let's say there's two issues. They're conceding goals from high lines and they can't score. And for a team like Wellington, it's going to be tough to fix both at the same time. So Chiefy's got his work cut out for him. That's for sure.
And we're talking parallels to the cricket as well, and this just reminds me of it even more too. With this, it's the way we play.
Of bad ball, cheapy ball, being stubborn in your system,
which is ironic because that's such an Australian football attitude, but it's the English cricket attitude at the moment, which is quite funny.
It's funny for sure.